Welcome to Education in the Community. I am your host, the Reverend Robert McKNIGHT, and today we are privileged to have joining us Mr. Muhammad Alim Ali. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
And we are going to discuss with you the education of the young black male. We'll be speaking in very general and broad terms because not only of the young black male, but at the education of African Americans here in this 21st century, a quarter through the first generation. So welcome.
Thank you.
I had an opportunity to speak with you a couple of times on the phone. We shared briefly before the show. You had also shared with me, and I got a chance to read through it, a children's book that you have written, The Boy and His Twin, The Tree. There should be information on the screen where you can contact Mr. Ali. I recommend this not only for preschoolers, because of the information is so valuable. I recommend it for parents. I recommend it for all of humanity. They said that the truth is often simple. And so in this book contains a greater truth, chances are, than you have gained in all of your education. We were talking before the show about the necessity not only of mastering the basic skills. For our generation, it was reading, it was writing, and it was arithmetic. When anyone asks me about my education, I tell them it was Mrs. Stella Brown, it was Miss Lois Query, and it was Miss Marguerite Cheatham, my first and second and third grade teachers. For after the third grade, I had mastered all of the basics, and that was including mental arithmetic. After that, my mother relocated from that little small rural community in Louisiana to California. And from the third grade through the 12th grade, the only skill I gained once I reached the 9th grade in junior high was typing, but they did not improve upon these three basic skills. But that was a different time in era. In addition to these three basic skills, we were talking briefly, and I believe that some words, beautiful words, that I read by the daughter of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend Bernice King. She said that if we are to reclaim and recapture our youth, it must be through the church and our spirituality. If we're going to reclaim them, if we're going to save them, turn them in a different direction. What is your opinion?
Well, let me say this. I think one of the most important things that you can give a student is to teach them their relationship with God. I think that's primary because that's a spiritual base. And with their relationship with God, as time goes on, they will get a sense of who they are as human beings. And they will learn as time goes on how to function. And they will learn their place in human society. But if that's taken out, what happens is you get a social group that's just running wild without no spiritual foundation. And that's what we see in the streets. See, African American boys, they need a special education.
What do you mean by special?
Well, again, they need a spiritual education, and they also need an education that teaches them their relationship with other human beings. They need a relationship that centers around the development of knowledge, what will make them successful, okay? And one of my pet peeves is they need to be taught the science of the English language. It's extremely important. And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. When I had the opportunity to take a graduate class, right? And I'm not going to talk about the school. However, when I walked into the class, I was the only African American in the class. But what set me above, or what set me through the class, was my ability to communicate in writing. That was major, and that's a major problem. So if African Americans leaders don't understand that, it's a generational waste, unfortunately. Unfortunately. So that's just based on what I've come to understand through reading, through experience, through living, and teaching children how to be human and successful in life.
Let's get back to this process of socialization that you mentioned. The late Dr. Asa Hilliard said that education and socialization are matters of life and death, not only of the students, but of the schools, the family, and the community. And then another lifetime ago, in the late 60s or early 70s, I recall that Dick Gregory came to town, and he was speaking on education. And he says, the great tragedy is that our young boys and girls, during their years in public school, have not achieved enough education to continue their education. What do you think about that?
Well, I somewhat agree with that, because there's certain things that in the broadest sense that needs to be taught. Science, technology. One major thing is economics and finance, the importance of that, and how one fits into the society, especially in the society, because listen, racism is a social killer. It's not only killing African Americans, it's killing the whole country.
Yes, yes.
It's just not happening to us.
Yes.
So the reality is that we can have a racial identity. There's nothing wrong with that.
Got you.
I'm not talking about a racist identity.
Yes, yes.
Okay, but our greatest and most essential identity is our human identity.
Yes.
And the racial identity on top of the human identity. And so what you have in the educational system in general, low school, elementary school, high school, college, also what they fail to do is to give the students a human identity.
Yes.
And I don't care. I mean, look, I love education.
Yes.
I love it. Believe me. You know, I come from a family of educators.
Yes.
You know, my family is from Broussard, Louisiana.
Yes.
And my grandmother, and this is something that I learned recently. My grandmother's brother and sister graduated from Grambling in the 20s. Yes. That's in my family.
Yes.
Okay, so education is so important, but education has to be applied. In other words, there should be some young African American men and women who can master finance and wealth.
Yes.
That's important.
That's important.
You know, you walk through the community and you see a breakdown of economic life, liquor stores, you know, a 7-Eleven, and I'm not knocking that. But what I'm saying is the overall economic life, as it's developed, will take the community into broader arenas in terms of international, national, international. So this is important. But as I was saying earlier, this racism,
yes,
it's poison.
It's poison. A couple of things. Just recently, I was reading where it says a little knowledge applied
Yeah.
is more than much knowledge unapplied.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, back to this process of socialization.
Yeah.
Brother Greg also said that the one thing that we yet lack is universal social acceptance.
I can see that universal social acceptance in terms of how we fit into the human family. That's important because if you don't see that, you'll block yourself out from the progress, and that will allow you to go forward when you have to deal with other people from another racial background, because the common denominator, the bottom line, is we are all human beings. And we have to recognize that. And so that will allow you to function just a little bit better. And that's not to say it's going to be easy, because there's a social intelligence that makes it extremely difficult for our children to prosper as a social group like they should. That's just what I've seen over a period of time. You know, I have brothers, sisters. I have, and like I say, my family, and the ones who have been able to gain some education, extremely important. But you have to attempt to gain education with a spiritual foundation. That's extremely important. Knowledge is important. Knowledge is power. Because knowledge allows you to do certain things. The knowledge of nature allows you to manipulate
Yes.
the forces of nature.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So electronics, computers, airplanes, that is the knowledge of nature being manipulated by the human being. That's the human place.
Yeah.
God gave you superiority over that knowledge. So to take this same kind of information to our young children, it will enlighten them and cause them to move forward and to be motivated. You know, I had a student come back to me once. She said, "Mr. Ali, before I was in your class, I didn't like science. But when I go to college, I'm going to study science."
Yes.
And that's just one thing. That's just one thing. So knowledge is extremely important. And I'm not talking about the kind of knowledge that allows us to act uncivilized.
Yes.
Because I was told, and I've read, that it is the duty of the civilized to teach civilization to the uncivilized. And part of that is knowledge. And part of that is education. Part of that is scriptural knowledge, which we talked about earlier.
Yes.
You got to have it.
Yes.
Or you'll run amok.
Now, a couple of things. Let me state this, especially on your last point on civilization. As we did talk about the importance of church and family and school, these three institutions, Andrew Billingsley, in his book, Black Families in White America, states that the family is the most basic institution of any people.
That's true.
The center and source of its civilization. That within the intimate context of the family, individuals develop their concept of themselves, their values, and their sense of worth in relationship to others in their world. Remember, it is, he said, the most basic institution. It is the foundation of any people.
Yes.
It is the center and source of its civilization. So as the family is attacked, you are really attacking the state of civilization of the people.
That's true. And again, too, I'd like to reiterate that the family is the basic unit of civilization. Okay? And because of the slave experience, and I'm not afraid to say this, because of the slave experience, slavery has caused us to be dysfunctional.
Yes.
In one of the most vital areas of our lives, and that's the family. And the whole idea of, you know, the strong black woman and the strong black woman, that's fine. That's fine. But male and female, as a cohesive group, working together to make the family strong, that's more natural.
That's natural.
That's more natural.
That's
And I'm not
natural,
against anybody being productive and being strong, but strong families, like you said, produce strong societies. Strong families produce strong economic institutions. Strong families produce scientific institutions.
Yeah.
Okay? And so we have to understand that.
And the target we must understand of slavery, you talked about it, was the African mind, to destroy the mind.
Yes, yes, yes.
And the mind is really your consciousness,
It's your consciousness
of God.
That's right.
And
right.
so in order to do that, they set about this process to thoroughly dehumanize the African.
That's true.
By removing all aspects of their culture and replacing it with an alien culture. And if you want to permanently oppress a people, you do not need military force.
That's true.
All you need to do is deny them access to their culture.
That's true.
And replace it with something that is foreign, something that is alien to them. And so then they will have no idea as to what is innately right and about their own humanity.
That's true. Think about this in terms of the social ramification and the idea of morality. The slave master went into the slave quarters and grabbed the woman and did his business. I mean, and that left a generational gap. So this is one of the things that we have to understand and try to make it better. Because again, the family is the basic unit of civilization. Without strong families, you're not going to have a strong civilization. And then as we grow, we have a place in the society. Obama is a good example of that. We have a place in society. Okay. Malcolm X was a good example of that.
Excellent example.
We have a place in society. Carter G. Woodson, Du Bois, and Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman. All these people were a part of that generation of individuals that was trying to push us forward so we can experience our human life and our human identity. Look, the slaves were brought, let me back up. The Africans were brought to America and made slaves. So what happened? They were stripped of their knowledge, their religion, their culture, and their language. So you have a situation where they were disconnected. Okay? And the ones who were able to raise up, they raised up as a result of the human soul. The human soul said, this is not right. This is not right. And the human soul making a connection to Almighty God. That's why. Frederick Douglass again. That's it. His soul was talking.
Now, and we have lost touch with the soul, with the essence of who we are. But let's look at this. If we round it off, slavery existed for some 16 generations. A generation, anthropologically speaking, is 25 years. It has only been over 151 years. It's just 6 short generations since we have been out of that terrible process of the humanization that removed us from the human family. That made us think that we were incapable of functioning on that level. 151 years is not that long in terms of history.
It's not.
Because I knew Mr. Andrew Hatch, I knew his family, who just recently transitioned, went to be with the ancestors. Mr. Hatch was 116.
Mm.
And maybe that was 3 months ago, he left us, which means his mother was a slave.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That's a short period of time. And so we, all of humanity, especially in the West, is suffering from a crisis of identity. We are not the only people who's suffering from a crisis, even a cultural crisis of identity. But for African people, the problem is compounded.
Yes.
Not only are we struggling because of a lack of cultural identity, that we don't really know who we are.
Yeah.
We are also lacking because of they have disassociated us from the rest of the human family.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we have 3 strikes, and disassociating us, making us think that we were less than human. They also tried to disconnect us from our God.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And you made a good point about identity problem. Let me say this. Don't think Caucasians don't have an identity problem.
Oh, no.
They have one too.
All people just about are suffering.
Yeah.
And we are witnessing that more today than any other time. And that is one of the reasons for all of the chaos and confusion that we are witnessing on every hand.
Yes.
Socially, economically, politically, everywhere you look, there's chaos.
Yeah. I have a scripture that says, reverence your guardian Lord who created you from one single soul. And the word is nefs. So, and this is a message to humanity. Okay, so because we all come from that one single soul. So this confusion has come in and has caused us to act other than like human beings when it comes to other people, when my difference, my variation is a blessing from God.
Yeah.
It's not a curse.
No.
You know, when I see an individual playing a violin, when I go to the symphony, when I go see the Temptations, when I play drums, because I'm a drummer, okay, when I eat food from other parts of the world, that's a variation. And that tells me more about the potential of the human being than anything else.
And what we must understand is to be different is not to be deficient.
That's true. That's true. No, that's true. That's true.
And many people equate differences, especially culturally, with deficiency.
That's true.
And you are not deficient in any way, simply because there's only one race.
That's true.
And that's the human race. Everything else was the creation of man for the subordination of everyone else.
Yeah, and see, and the other thing too, when man forgets to take his scriptural knowledge as superior knowledge, and I say that, and that's not to say you don't go to school to be a doctor or a lawyer, but there's something in scriptural knowledge that makes it superior for you to be the kind of human being that you should be. And that's important. And I say this in the context of I look around and I see what's going on, and I run into people all the time, and because you could be an educated fool. You be an educated fool.
That's profound ignorance.
And I know some of them. So there's certain basic things that are extremely important. But I think the most extremely important thing is to understand our human content and understand that our relationship with God, and God is superior. In my religion, we say, Allahu Akbar, God is superior, okay? And so that means that there's nothing greater than God. And we turn to God for guidance, for help, for understanding. Because if you don't, the whole idea of cognition is not enough to cause human beings to go forward, to go into the right direction. So we see that in society. And let me make a point here. Look at that situation in Flint, Michigan.
Yes, the water.
I asked the question, how could a government official allow the whole city to be poisoned? If that individual, and I'm not saying they don't, if that individual had some spiritual knowledge and some God consciousness, maybe he would have thought about it. That's just my opinion. But it's because I have family in Flint. Mm-hmm. I have family in Flint. Mm-hmm. But there's certain things that you won't do because you have a sense of consciousness about the right and the wrong of doing something. I'm talking about the type of things that have broad social ramifications.
Now, you cannot have a consciousness without this cognition, without this awareness of God.
Yeah.
And God is not separate from man. God is within. And so we have to look at the power. There is a scripture in the Christian Bible that says, and greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. And do you not know that the body is the temple of the living God, and the Spirit of God dwelleth therein? God, in the original teaching of God, never separate himself from man. Matter of fact, in Romans it says, in who, some translation says, and what shall separate us from the love of God? And it marches every possible human condition before us, only to come to the conclusion that we are more than conquerors, and there is nothing that can separate us from that love. If I could borrow the Carter G. Woodson book, with the exception of the miseducation. You got to know that you have this power working on the inside of you. Your greatness may not be on the basketball court, or the football field, or the baseball diamond, or on the stage underneath the lights, but you have greatness within you. And we must discover that greatness. We must teach our students that they have all been gifted. And I saw on the calendar where it says that all students are gifted, except some students unwrap their gifts later than others. I see we are about out of time, and this always happens when we get to the essence of the discussion. So I want to thank you, for being with us, and invite you to come back again and write on your notes where we left off, so that we will continue from here. The next time Brother Ali has an opportunity to come and share with us. And so remember the boy and his twin, the tree, and he has other books. Get the information off of the screen and make sure you share this with your family. And so until next time, I am your host, Reverend McKnight, saying so long.